So, I don't know if you have ever done a Pecha Kucha presentation, but it is perhaps the most stressful thing you can go through. In fact, there's been a study done that 85% of all couples that do Pecha Kucha presentations together fail. That's what happens. Pecha Kucha destroys relationships. It's true. But our next couple, ladies and gentlemen, have defeated the odds. Up next, we have Johannah Blackman and Dennis Kiley, and they're going to talk to you about climate change. Lyzz is right.
Well, we haven't defeated the odds yet. About 6 minutes and 20 seconds.
All right, ready guys?
Ready.
Go.
So as two people who are pretty concerned about climate change and have a background in psychology, we've become increasingly interested in the emerging field of climate psychology, which studies humans' reactions to climate change, both psychological and behavioral in nature. And as we started to get into this field, we began looking at how the message of climate change is being presented and what the tone is in which it's being presented. So you see a lot of sense of alarm, playing to people's fears, very global in scale and in the future, which is the nature of the problem, but that presentation doesn't necessarily achieve the response that we might hope it would.
And so emotions are really valuable, are very valuable in order to get people's attention and get people to act as well. And so case in point, you have here this young child that's impoverished, it's in Africa, it's in places that we may not be able to relate to. But because of our capacity to empathize, because we feel a sense of emotion, there's an impact, there's a sense of relationship, both to the problem, to the solution, to the cause, and we're more likely to act. Whether that act being to reduce our plastic use, to recycle, to participate in environmental cleanup. But the challenge with drawing upon these heavy emotions or jarring images is that often the actions are short-lived. They're more temporary, there's not as long-term follow-through with it, because what ends up happening is we're trying to reduce our own felt sense and not necessarily the problem itself. Furthermore, when you use emotions like guilt, fear, shame, sadness, what ends up happening is if it's too strong of an emotion, it overwhelms the psyche, we end up feeling despair and hopeless, and ultimately we numb out, we disconnect from the problem, and then we don't act at all, which is quite the contrary to what we want. And furthermore, when you use these big emotions, these jarring images like the polar bear, you got this bird with plastic, furthermore, the emotions are, again, so large, but the problem also feels so huge, and the solution, frankly, often feels either unrealistic or so far away that, again, we return back to that place of we feel numb, we feel disconnected, and we ultimately don't act.
So a really important psychological theory to look at in relationship to climate change is attachment theory, which explores the infant's bond that they form with their primary caregiver, especially around the need of security and survival. And this initial bond then informs our attachment style to others throughout our lives. So due to the circumstances of that initial attachment, we either form a secure style of attachment or we form an anxious, resistant, or an avoidant style of attachment. And our style of attachment determines how we therefore treat others that we have that kind of connection, attached connection to. This applies to climate change because we obviously have some sort of attachment to the natural world around us, to beings other than human beings. And our style of attachment informs how we're going to treat that natural world, which we do have a security, survival relationship with. So if we have a secure sense of attachment with nature, we're going to be compassionate and caring. We're going to have empathy. You can see up at the top there. If we have a more resistant, anxious, or avoidant style of attachment, we're going to have behaviors such as being selfish. We might be overindulgent, narcissistic, or exploitative. So the nature of our attachment with the natural world and our attachment style really determines how we treat it.
The good news is for those who don't necessarily have a secure attachment style, this can be changed. It is a pliable attachment style. And what's really necessary is that people have continued positive, healthy, supportive, healing experiences with the local environment, such that the old wounds are healed, new associations, neural pathways are created. And all it really takes, again, is these continued positive experiences, and it happens in a local, immediate way. And this emphasis on local is also important for engaging people in certain causes. If it feels local, pertinent to our here and now, to the community that we're a part of, people we care about, we're more likely to engage. And this Bangor Daily News article wonderfully talks about landfills. It's immediate to our experience, our worldview, and it shows solutions.
And the next day in the Bangor Daily News, there was an editorial about possible solutions to that problem of overfilled landfills, including the fact that 20% of what we put in the landfill in Maine could be recycled, 40% of it could be composted, and the editorial included these organizations and programs that can help be part of the solution. So it was a great presentation of local problem, local solution.
Most simply, people don't really get involved and participate unless it involves an issue that is pertinent and that they care about and it pertains to their values. So it's important that we cater messages accordingly so that we talk differently to a parent than we would a teenager, to someone who values national security versus saving money, illness prevention. We need to adapt accordingly. And it's not just personal values, but it's collective communal identities that we also draw upon. If we feel like our collective identity, the people we care about are being impacted, we're more likely to participate. So for example, here on MDI, it would be the park, the lab, fishing community, local food. We're more likely to engage if it feels like our community depends on it.
And just to return to fear for a moment, when it comes to climate change, fear really isn't necessarily a good motivator because when we're afraid, we go into security mode. We turn inward, we follow a leader blindly, and to face this particular challenge, we want to be looking outward, connecting with others, getting really creative and innovative and feeling empowered to do so.
So in order to get people to participate, as I said, one is local, but the other is you need people who are doing it already and that those people feel relatable. They feel somewhat similar to us, that we can feel like they're not that different. And it's like, oh, I can do this as well. They've set a model and an example to follow, and there is this sense of kinship and like, oh, I can do it also.
A great example of a hero in the business world is Ray Anderson, who's the founder and director of one of the world's largest carpet manufacturers. And in 1994, he decided that his company was going to go towards zero carbon footprint. By 2004, they were over halfway there and still very economically successful. So these hero stories need to be shared.
And with large issues like climate change, it's important that we stay connected. It's that issue of connection that gets people involved in the first place, whether it's a connection to the problem, the solution, the people being impacted. But it's also for these long-term projects with slow results, people need to continue to feel that sense of connection. Because if they don't, they'll frankly detach and they won't continue that effort.
So we've barely scratched the surface and haven't breathed it all in the process. There's a lot of resources out there. There's a Climate Psychology Alliance based out of the UK. There's a book, Psychology of Climate Change and Communication. Dennis is giving a talk on eco-psychology at the Jessup Library later this month. If you have questions, ask us during the break. Thank you.
You see, ladies and gentlemen, it really is all about communication.